Hare Krishna, dear devotee friends. I wanted to share something that I came across recently in a passage in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by Edward Bryant. And it talks about how the Atma interacts with the subtle body. And it sparks some insights for me about how meditation works, why it's essential to be still, and why japa of the Mahamantra is particularly efficacious. So it's like this section of the sutra has kind of refreshed and upgraded my understanding and commitment to a focused Nam Japa Seva. So I thought if it did it for me, maybe it can do it for you too. So this is how the understanding in the sutras. So the subtle body consists, as we know, of the mind, intellect, and ego. And the intellect is closest to the Atma. So according to some commentators, the intellect functions like a mirror. So you have the soul and intellect, and it's reflective, the intellect, because it is made of sattva, or predominantly sattva, it can reflect the soul to itself. So just like light bounces off an illuminated object to its source, the consciousness of the self bounces off the intellect and presents a reflection to the soul. So it can, anyway, the intellect can do this. But just as we become conscious of our appearance in a mirror due to its reflectivity, so the soul becomes conscious of its reflection in the animated intellect. So then why don't we see the self? Well, the intellect is constantly shifting. It's because of the images coming from the mind and the senses. Therefore, the reflection then going back to the Atma becomes transformed by changing form. Just like if a reflection in a mirror is distorted, you won't see yourself clearly, and because when the mirror is warped, it presents an incorrect image. So by the activities in the mind, the intellect becomes distorted, and then the Atma doesn't see itself, it sees the distortion, and considers that the distorted image is inherent to itself. So right now, what we're experiencing, we're looking at a dirty mirror or a distorted mirror, and we're thinking that we're that. So this is the mechanism, how the mechanism described that causes the Atma's illusion and ignorance, by which the Atma identifies itself with the mind and the senses and the objects and transformations of matter, like birth and death and old age, happiness, distress, peacefulness, anxiety. Even though the Atma is completely outside and separate from the world of matter, it conceives of itself like this because of that distorted reflection. So all of yoga involves preventing the mind from being molded by these permutations, or they're called the vrittis, or the impressions and thoughts of the objects of the world. So why? So the Atma can regain its autonomous nature. If it sees itself clearly, then it will act like the self. So Edwin Bryant, professor of Indic studies, says that all of Hinduism is based on this point of fixing the mind. Now, one thing that we should be aware of, fixing the mind is not the mindfulness of Buddhism. In Buddhism, we're asked to observe our thoughts, let them go by with no attachment or aversion. You just become the observer. In Hinduism and the yoga traditions, the whole point is to fix the mind so it stops that activity, so the intellect's sattva can become prominent and we can see ourselves. So generally, that is done by fixing the mind on one single thing. so that there's no more distortions that get sent to the intellect. And when the mind is calmed to this degree, then the intellect directly reflects the Atma to itself, then we can see itself. Therefore, mind control is a non-negotiable element in liberating the self. And various Hindu schools offer different methods to fix the mind. So when we're thinking of our own meditation practice, we can remember that meditation offers a specific result and it's performed in a specific manner. And it is this understanding is based on the knowledge of how the subtle body is working with the mind. And as I just said, when we see the self, then we can act as the self in all the ways we interface with the world. And then it becomes a powerful spiritual act, obviously, because we're acting as the self. So often we hear that sitting in a yoga posture in a quiet or sacred place is the essential practice of fixing the mind. And once sitting in a conducive manner and in a conducive environment, then one focuses the vision at the tip of the nose or some other prop. However, the most prominent form of meditation in Hinduism is mantra japa. It seems that the mind fixes itself more readily on a mantra. And when you understand that a mantra is not just a word, but an embodiment of spirit, we do more than fix the mind, we purify the subtle body of the vrittis or impressions. If we don't use a mantra to fix the mind, we may not find permanent success in liberating the self. We have, for instance, the example of Sabari Muni. He was so accomplished in mind control that he was meditating underneath the water for years, but material desires became activated, his meditation broke, and he left the water in search of fulfilling those desires. This means that the root cause of desire wasn't eradicated by meditation. In other words, you can perfectly fix the mind and see yourself, but to remain in that state, the samskaras or impressions of desire have to be removed. And we know from the Gita that all liberation processes require bhakti to be successful. In other words, grace is required to do what we can't do on our own. We can fix the mind, but we require grace to remove karmic reactions and desires. We need to fix the mind and purify it of all impressions. So it is the mantra that can purify the mind intelligence. And as we know, not all mantras are created equal in their ability to purify the mind, and different mantras take you to different destinations. So then the question is, which mantra is most efficacious? Well, the Kali Santarna Upanishad says it's the Maha Mantra, as we know, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us that the Maha Mantra is the only mantra that can completely cleanse the mirror of the mind. It removes all the samskaras and impressions from unlimited lives at the root. So with the Maha Mantra, we have the ideal means to fix and purify the mind. It's extremely powerful. And therefore, we've taken up the meditation practice of Nam Japa. And further, because Krishna is non-different from his names, we associate directly with him when we chant. In his association, a relationship with him can develop. And the purification of the mantra and associating with him through his holy names and hearing about him, then pure love of God arises, and eventually we develop a spiritual form that is fit to engage in direct service to him in his Paravyam. So I wonder if Krishna Bhaktas are aware of these mechanics of meditation. I mean, we've always heard control the mind, fix the mind, but this additional information, it's more detailed. So it gives us something more to understand why mantra meditation works. And I'm thinking that maybe so many of us don't follow the guidelines because we understand that the mantra is all powerful, that we have Krishna's blessings, and therefore maybe we tend to neglect the desirable recommended aspects of a meditation practice. But would remembering the mechanics of the subtle body help our Nam Japa Seva? I would think so. It has for me. And even before I read this passage in the Yoga Sutras, I've experimented with sitting, standing, and walking while chanting. And in my experience, there's a noticeable difference in my ability to fix the mind on the mantra between these different physical states. And there's no question sitting is the best. When standing, I can fix the mind, but only with additional effort. And then there are still more mental fluctuations that can distract. So it takes more effort to control the mind then. And when walking, no matter how hard I try, I can't even come close to the meditation that's possible while sitting. You know, you can think about this. To walk, you need to keep your eyes open to see where you're going. And then the eyes wander and we look around. And all of this sensory input is fed to the intellect, and it means the mind cannot be fixed to the highest degree. And you know, I was thinking about this. It's like you can actually observe the level of distraction of someone who's pacing or walking, because oftentimes we don't even hear all the syllables or the names of the mantra chanted by them. Of course, you know, this obviously doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm wondering how much it does apply to us. And of course, when the mind isn't fixed on the mantra, then we're not chanting the pure mantra. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda strongly urges us to avoid laziness and indifference and inattention when chanting the holy names. So it seems to me that understanding the science and the mechanisms of meditation and engaging in the practice in the manner outlined by the sacred texts would give us the best chance of not being indifferent or inattentive to the holy names. So perhaps this insight into the workings of the mind and intellect from the sutras can encourage us to better fix our mind and improve our Nam Japa Seva. So that said, I'm curious to hear if you've ever tried the experiment I did, testing what position facilitates your best japa. You know, does the knowledge of the mechanics of meditation inspire you to more carefully fix your mind during japa? Let me know your thoughts and experiences. You can write me at pranadakomtwa@gmail or on my website, pranadakomtwa.com. Hare Krishna. I look forward to hearing from you.